Hi everyone, I'm Benjamin Yang. If you're new to this channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. For those of you who are new to this channel, I make videos based on my experience as a biology tutor. And I hope that my videos will help you whether you're a current student, soon to be, or if you're here just for the fun of it. Without further delay, let's get on with today's video. Some of my channel subscribers have requested that I do a video to talk about my career in teaching. And so in this video, I'm first going to talk about my story, and second, I'm going to talk about some of the characteristics that a teacher should have. And if you stay to the end of this video, I'm going to finally talk about what are some of the things that you can do to explore whether this field is suitable for you. And with that, let's dive right in. Actually, when I started out, I didn't really want to be a teacher. I was more interested in being a medical doctor. Back in those days when I was really young, there was this show, I don't know how many of you actually have heard it before, called ER, Emergency Room. And this predates even Grey's Anatomy, which I think right now is the most popular show, medical drama. I'm not very sure. I think right now it's Grey's Anatomy, but ER is way before that. So what happened was when ER was shown an episode on public TV, the very next day, a group of us would come together to discuss about the episode, you know. So back then, I already have an inkling that I want to try medicine. I want to try for it. And try I did. So a few years later, I wrote to one of the local hospitals, A&E department, one of the chiefs there, to ask whether I could go into the department and to do an observational stint to see whether this is something that I like or not. And the chief says, okay, come in. And I was so happy, you know, to be given this opportunity. The first question he asked was, what time you want to come in? And I was telling him, it has to be midnight. Because midnight is where all the strange things start to happen. And when you see a lot of like interesting things, maybe this would, you know, motivate me to want to do medicine even more, right? Because during daytime, everyone is working, right? So what kind of strange illnesses and accidents would there be and emergencies would there be? Usually are very mundane. So at night should be when people are fighting, people are drinking, so the drunks start coming in, right? And stabbing cases and whatnot. Like murders usually happen at night, right? So that was what I was thinking. And with that, I started the stint. And there are many things that happened during this hospital observation. And some of these stories will actually be carried with me for the rest of my life. And let me tell you one such story for one of the nights, which was so memorable. So one of the nights in the observational stint, I think about 1 a.m. in the morning, the ambulance was coming in, sirens blaring and everything. Then when the stretcher came out with the patient, right, the patient I saw from afar was an Indian young man. And when he came closer, every one of our jaws dropped. Because he's got a dagger sticking out on the side of his head. Oh my god. Every one of us was shocked, you know. The stranger thing was, he was coherent. His eyes was open, and when we were asking him questions, he was able to answer coherently. That was something that all of us were puzzled with, and there was no blood gushing out, you know. So it was very lucky because of course our skull is quite thick and is protective lah. So the knife didn't go right in. In fact, the knife sliced through the skin against the skull. So it was still not that bad. And for some reason, it didn't hit any major artery or blood vessel. So it wasn't like pouring blood, you know, of any sort like those that you see in the horror shows. No, none of that. So the doctors, of course, was trying to make sure his vital signs are stable, and they paged for neurosurgeons. So when the neurosurgeon came in, even the neurosurgeon came in, the guy who came in, I remember, was pretty amused at what he was seeing, right? So because he was stable and it was not so urgent and we were waiting for the bed to be available for him to be wheeled up into the neurosurgeon department, so everyone started taking selfies with him. You know, even he himself was pretty amused at the state that he's in. So that was one of the stories which happened in one of the nights, which was very memorable. And there were many of such stories which I can remember. Of course, some of them are funny like this, but there are also many cases which are quite sad. Maybe in the future to come, I will recount some of these stories on this video channel. So after this entire exciting observational stint, I came to one conclusion. And the conclusion was, unfortunately, medicine was not for me. The study of it was extremely exciting, but unfortunately, the lifestyle is something that does not suit me. Why? I remember that when I was very young, every time when exams come, right, it's like, when you're a student, you have so many things you are trying to study, but because of procrastination, because you didn't use your time efficiently, so I never finished the preparation of all the materials that I'm supposed to be examined for in many instances. So in these situations, when I told myself, okay, I need to wake up early, or I cannot sleep, I need to study until I finish before I sleep, right? In every circumstance like this, back in my youth, that I can remember of, never was there once where I actually was able to stay up throughout the night or wake up early to study before the exams. Every single instance that I can remember was me falling asleep. And I'm one of those sorts where the moment I close my eyes, the next moment I open my eyes is 9 a.m. So I'm one of those who will never wake up in the middle of the night, right? So thankfully I have a good quality of sleep and I'm a very heavy sleeper. So sometimes I tell people, even if the fire were to come, right, I'll sleep my way through it. And then when I look at the hospital is an environment where it's full of activity at night, actually. There are many nurses and doctors milling about because a lot of medical emergencies sometimes happen in the middle of the night. And some of the patients, as much as they are trying to get into sleep, right, but there's a lot of medical ailments, so I see a lot of doctors hanging around, doing what they need to do and things like that. And I told myself, unfortunately, as much as I want to, I can never see myself working in such situations. I cannot stay awake to save myself. What more, I need to stay awake to save somebody else. With that kind of burden on me, I was telling myself, no, I cannot do that, I cannot imagine those, how many patients I'm going to kill just because I was in the middle of the night, being half awake or not, right? So that was when I decided, no, unfortunately, the lifestyle is something that I cannot tolerate, even though the study was something that I really enjoyed. So I continued to search for something that's suitable for me in terms of lifestyle, and also the contents of which I need to learn for the profession is something that is interesting to me so that it can drive me towards the progression in terms of career. So thinking back about medicine back then, the lifestyle was not suitable, but the content was what was driving my interest, right? And when I was looking around, I found courses in biomedical science which looked in a hyper-focused way at the mechanism of disease. Not how to treat disease, but the mechanism of it. And it's because of these mechanisms understanding, then you can create further treatment strategies. So this was when I began to realize that, this was something that was interesting. So I was so lucky to apply to Bristol University in the UK and was accepted. And when I started my learning journey there, it completely changed my perspective of education. The professors I had were like master story crafters. So they would create cliffhangers right at the end of a class. So every time when you're like, I want to know, can you tell me more about this? The period will end, So it became a habit for me to wake up first thing in the morning to yearn for class. So I'll get myself ready, even if it's dead winter, right, where it was cold and everything, and I still had this drive to want to go to class, to go and find out what is the conclusion to this, what is the mechanism, what's the thing that my professor was trying to talk about. And that was where there was this seed of interest in teaching. I was thinking to myself back then, what if I can bring this brand of education back to Singapore schools? Because back in Singapore, for the past umpteen years when I was a student, prior to university, I've never had that, interesting spark and idea in school that made me yearn to go back to school. So I was hoping to bring this back into Singapore. And that was when my teaching journey started. Now that you've heard about my story of how I began my teaching journey, now it's time to talk about the 3 characteristics that a person who is interested in teaching should have. This is based on my experience in teaching since 2004. Oh my god, I'm really old, thinking about it. Alright, let's begin. So the first characteristic you should have is to have a compassion for your students. The idea here is if you can understand and sympathize that your students are touching the material that you're about to teach for the first time in their life potentially, and obviously there will going to be some confusion that arises when you cover this material. If you can understand and sympathize with your students so that you can slow down, or so that you can re-explain or repeat what you have just said so that they can understand, will make them think that you are a good teacher. And when they think that you are a good teacher, this will create a positive feedback loop so that you continue to persist in being sympathetic to your students, who will continue to think you're a good teacher, and so on and so on. So this is good for your teaching career because they determine that you are good in teaching, but it's also good for your students as well because they will then be able to grasp the concepts that you teach. The second characteristic a person should have if they are interested in a teaching career is to at least be interested in the subject they are about to teach. The idea here is if you are interested in the subject that you're about to teach, then you spend more time to work on the material that you're going to use to teach your students. And the more time you spend on the material, the better quality your material would be. And this will facilitate your students' learning process. And if it facilitates their learning process, then they will deem that the time that they spent in this portion in school would be meaningful. How often have you heard of students who say, "Oh my god, school is a waste of time"? By having an interest in the subject you're about to teach and then creating very good material that facilitates the teaching process would mean that your students will not have this remark anymore, and in turn will make them look forward to the next lesson that you craft for them during class. The third characteristic a person should have if they are interested in a teaching career is to have a teachable heart. Let me explain. I find some of my teaching colleagues out there with God complexes, where everything that they teach, they feel is absolutely correct and there's no way that they are wrong ever. I find this to be a very big problem. First, because they do not have a teachable heart, they cannot appreciate that sometimes or many times students evolve, they change in characteristics from batch to batch to batch. Not only that, the teaching profession also continues to change. Even the times that we are in right now is very different from the past. Not only that, every day we have seen new things come out. So the materials that we teach also continue to evolve with new understanding based on new research. And very often, the ministries of education continue to evolve the syllabus as well. So a teacher cannot say that everything that they say is absolutely correct. At this point in time, I find even after over a decade of teaching that I find errors that I need to resolve when I teach, and there are ways in which I can become better. So I continue to learn new material in order to turn around and to transfer this information that I've learned to my students. Because at the end of the day, isn't the purpose of the teachers and educators to guide the students and to prepare them for the future? And if that were the case, shouldn't we begin to adapt continuously and change and evolve continuously so that we can continuously help our students from year to year to year? Just now, I talked about 3 characteristics a person should have if they're interested in a teaching career. Now, I want to talk about 3 things that one can explore to see whether the teaching career is suitable for the person. Let's talk about the first one right now. The first way is something that I first used to start my teaching career. So I went to my teacher whom I'm close to and offered to conduct a free session for his students on a topic that's relevant for his students and which is interesting to me. The second thing you can do is to look for programs that offer free tuition. Usually these programs are actively looking for many tutors who can commit their time. I'm going to put a link in the video description below to point to you some of these free programs. The third option that you can explore is actually offered by the Ministry of Education in Singapore. I'll put the link in the video description below to 2 programs that they offer in which you can commit yourself part-time going to the schools. This will be remunerated on an hourly basis, and how much you get is based on your qualifications. I hope that the insights I provided will be useful for you, and some of you I hope will continue to embark on this journey in the profession to molding the future generation and to make a difference one student at a time. For those of you who are going to embark on the teaching profession, could you please start by educating me with the like button below? Tell me in the comment section below if you would like me to talk about the other careers, and I might bring some of my friends in those professions to share some of their insights with you. And with that, you've been awesome, and I'm Benjamin Yang. See you in the next video.